World Ember, where we interview Ember developers who are awesome, but not necessarily famous yet. So today we have Chris Bonser, and he works for Khorus here in Austin. So go ahead and tell us a little about yourself, how long you've been programming, and what do you do when you're not writing Ember code?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I live in Austin, Texas. I've been programming professionally for 11 years.
That is quite a while.
Yeah, and I actually came at it a little sideways. I was an electrical engineer in school. I was real hardware focused. So the only, school training for programming I had was real low-level stuff like assembly and other low-level languages. I went to work at AMD, and my job was actually to help build test equipment for the microprocessors. So the equipment was automated with software, and that's really when I, poured into some learning software development. And as part of that, we did a lot with Ruby, and went from knowing Ruby as a language to eventually learning Rails, and then eventually, starting to get into the front end.
Going back a little bit, so you're saying Ruby is testing our microchips.
Ruby is testing the equipment that tests our microchips.
All right, so it's metatesting.
Is that complicated enough, convoluted enough for you?
So do you test the Ruby that tests the equipment that tests the microchips?
Yes, although maybe not as much as we wanted. But the interesting thing about all that is we are testing stuff that we expect to fail in weird and unpredictable ways. So if it could go wrong, it would go wrong, including equipment catching on fire, or the processor overwriting sections of the hard disk so the next time you try and boot, it doesn't boot, and all kinds of fun things like that. So learning to deal with unpredictable things was a big part of that job.
Wow, that's much more unpredictable than just, say, sending the wrong header.
Yes. Yeah.
What was the if-then statement? If it catches on fire, then...
Yes. So, there was lots of sensors on the equipment, so we would know if it caught on fire or if a fuse tripped or something like that.
Right. So you, trigger the sprinklers or...
Well, we tried really hard not to do that.
Right, because that would probably ruin a lot of microchips.
Yes.
Yeah. So with all the sensors, we're getting way off topic here, but that's okay. So it was sort of like a nervous system where it recognizes where it is and, tries to stamp out the fire?
No, it wasn't that precise, but I was in our test facility in Asia one time, and I was standing in person in front of one of our test setups when it caught on fire, and it was literally 3 feet from my face, this hot blue electrical fire, and ran over and hit the off switch and killed the power to the equipment. So that was a good time.
Oh man, I hope to one day to have my code catch on fire.
Yes.
That is a career goal now.
Good luck.
Thank you. All right, so how long have you been doing Ember?
A little under 2 years.
Awesome. That's pretty senior for Ember still.
Yeah, so it was, I think, picked it up in 1.5 or 1.6 of Ember, and Ember Data was still in beta.
Yeah, and so how did you get into Ember?
Well, I started at Khorus, and maybe a month and a half before I got hired, they had made the decision to rewrite the app in Ember. And so I jumped in kind of right at the beginning of things and learned Ember with the team and went from there. So part of the appeal to coming to Khorus was getting to kind of work on the latest and greatest technology and get to build a single-page app. And it's been quite a ride.
Yeah, I still remember when single-page app was unusual.
Yeah.
I've been immersed in it so long that it seems weird to not do it.
It does, doesn't it? You go use an old application that's not a single-page app, and you're like, why is my browser reloading?
Yeah, it feels, I say this, emberscreencast.com is actually a Rails app. So I can't look too far down. But yeah, using most apps still feels clunky if they're not Ember. But okay, so the organization decided to use Ember. Do you know what the thought processes were around that?
Yeah, I've talked to folks that were around in that time, and at the time we had released version 1 of our app, and it was just a Rails CRUD app, and they're looking to go revamp the UI and make it sexier, easier to use. And they debated like even doing single page app versus just kind of more Ajax and some home rolled JavaScript. And eventually it came down to really wanting to do the single page app, and they're looking at Angular and Ember. And at the time, Ember seemed to be the favorite a lot of the Rails community. And so that kind of swayed the decision. In retrospect, I'm really glad that they, picked Ember. I'm not envious of those Angular devs that are having to prepare to rewrite their app for Angular 2.
Ooh, yeah.
I think we backed a good horse.
Yeah, I've definitely been very happy with my decision. And so what was the transition like, going from the Rails app to the Ember app?
It was hard. I'm not going to lie. In some cases it was hard because we're still at that stage where there's a bunch of immaturity in Ember, and especially in Ember Data.
Mm-hmm.
And so often we found ourselves using the beta of the next version of one of those, or a fork off of master or something like that. And at the time, acceptance testing was really painful.
Yeah, I remember that.
And we burnt a lot of developer hours trying to make acceptance testing work, and lots of times spelunking in the framework code. And eventually, we learned not to touch the hot stove, and we backed off of acceptance testing for a while.
Have you guys been able to do it now?
We're just now revisiting it.
Uh-huh.
So we have a little bit of unit integration tests, and I'm hoping this quarter we revisit acceptance testing, because we've done some spikes with it on greenfield Ember projects, and it's much better now. The story's better, so.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Especially now with you've got Ember Data Factory Guy and you've got Ember CLI Mirage that make the testing story with data way easier.
Yeah, and to be honest, that was a big part of our challenge. Is we have fairly complex data structures in our app, and trying to figure out a way to construct that for testing back then was very difficult. So the other thing that was hard in the transition from the Rails app to Ember was that the world doesn't stop while you rewrite your app. So there were still business priorities to add new features. What was originally supposed to be a more simple rewrite turned into like a full redesign of our UI, which then turned into more features being added. So it was like chasing after, it was like running for an end zone that was running away from you.
Yeah, football players have it easy. Their end zones don't run.
Yes. But so it took us about 3 quarters to get to a beta, and then additional quarter we got to GA, and our customers have all been on our Ember app since mid last year.
Awesome. And what's the feedback been for that?
Mostly really positive. I think the users found the app easier to use, more a delightful experience. On the development front now, I find it a lot easier to make really well-polished features, to do that in a much more rapid fashion than we would have in the past. So I think some of the pain in the transition came because Ember was still a little immature, and we didn't know Ember, but it's paid off.
Awesome. And so specifically, what organizational problems has Ember solved for you? Like, obviously, it's a much better app than one that takes a while to reload every time. Well, I guess I should ask, how many people are working on the team?
We've been very lean. We've kind of maintained a headcount of around 3 developers, and we have bounced between the front end and the back end work. And then we've had a few contractors that we've used to fill in certain parts of the puzzle. So we've been pretty lean for, I think, the size of app that we have. But the cool thing about Ember is that, you're asking like what pluses are there in using Ember. Ember is real strong about conventions. And so I'm able to go look at any part of our code that I may have not looked at before. And in really short order, I know how it works, where I should expect certain concerns to be implemented. And that's a huge plus,
Yeah, I've definitely noticed that. I can go into almost any app, any Ember app, and just know right where to go.
Yeah. I've also really appreciated the add-ons. There's a lot of great community support. We have some additional separate applications that are kind of sitting on, that we're ruminating on. And so the ability to pull parts of our main app out into add-ons and then share them between these different apps will be really powerful.
Yeah, that's been huge.
And then it's great not having to refigure out how to do things that the community's already figured out, right? So big fan of Liquid Fire and the animations you can do with that, and Ember Paper is something we've been using and been real happy with.
Cool.
Yeah, and then even like simple things like just like Ember Moment, like really easy way to pull Ember into the app and have little component helpers to format dates,
Mm-hmm. Right. It's a growing tool set that's just there for you.
Mm-hmm.
So go ahead and tell us a little bit about what Khorus does.
Sure. So Khorus, our kind of aim is to help our customers be the best run companies on earth. So
that's a good aim.
Yeah, we do that through helping the CEO and executive team articulate a strategy on a quarterly basis and then execute on that. And
so you do it by helping your client companies, not by sabotaging their competitors.
Yes.
There are multiple ways to get to best run companies.
I guess so. More terrible. No, that's not the strategy. But yeah, so we help with like setting strategy, execution, and talent management, and some stuff around culture. So it's really a new software category, and we're in that fun stage of the market where we're fighting to define the software category.
So let's talk a little bit more about each of those things that you're trying to promote within those companies. How do you do that with software?
The strategy and the execution takes the form of setting quarterly goals, and the CEO and executive team does that, and then the goals are cascaded down through the organization, and then on a weekly basis, everybody in the organization goes in, takes about 5 minutes, and they give predictive insight as to whether they're going to achieve their goals or not. And that gets rolled up into this really easy to use, easy to understand dashboard that the CEO can use to run their weekly ops meeting. And so instead of the CEO getting to the end of the quarter and realizing they're going to miss their number in the last week, they will get this insight from maybe someone all the way down, 8 levels down in the organization saying, hey, we're going to miss our number this quarter. And the CEO can then see that much earlier and react to it and maybe help that person get their goal achieved so that the company stays on track.
Mm-hmm. In a company, do people usually report those numbers correctly, non-optimistically?
Yeah, I mean, everybody has, I guess, their personal bent towards whether they are pessimist or optimist. But, I think that's why there's value in it being a weekly check-in, right? One week, maybe at an emotional level, you're not feeling so great about it. But next week, you put on your more analytical hat and you feel better. So, as that kind of aggregates up to the CEO level, it becomes a useful thing for them.
Right. So the CEO gets both the numbers and the mood of the entire company.
Yeah, you can kind of get a read out of that.
So it's doing analytics on your own company almost.
So I guess maybe a concrete example is the best. So imagine the CEO sets a goal and says, hey, we need to make $5 million in revenue this quarter.
Okay.
The marketing team is going to have a goal that says we need to develop 800 new leads. And the sales team is going to have a goal that's we need to close this many deals. The engineering team might have a goal that says we got to release product X and product Y by these dates. And then that'll cascade all the way down to like the individual engineers that are working on the project will have very specific goals around their stuff. And it might be one of those engineers at the bottom that has a key piece of the project that has to be delivered on time to meet the number. And he says, hey, it's very unlikely I'm going to get this achieved unless I get some help. And, he'll be able to put that feedback in. It cascades all the way up the organization. And at the executive team level, they could say, well, let's get that guy some help and make sure we hit this goal, right?
So part of this is building out a dependency chain to see which is the most necessary to get done first.
It's not task management software, so it doesn't quite build this dependency chain like you're speaking of. But
okay, how do we know which engineering projects are vital?
That's the neat thing about having the goals cascade from the top to the bottom is, there might be an engineer down at the at the bottom of the organization who's saying I'm red, and his manager is going to look at that and say, yeah, but that doesn't really impact the overall project, so I'm going to be green even though the guy that reports to me is red. So there's this human intuition at each level that takes all those kind of factors into play and makes it meaningful.
All right, yeah, so the software doesn't do all of it. It just helps the humans.
Yes.
All right, that's probably for the best that it works as a team.
Yeah, and from a development perspective, what's interesting about this project is we have a user tree of data, right? Your organization tree, and then we end up with several goal trees of data, and they intersect each other at different points. And so you can imagine in the UI, as you're trying to explore you want to give the user the ability to explore who's doing what and how do goals connect to one another. It's a lot of data, and so you end up with as an engineer, working on this project, making a lot of interesting decisions around what data do I load when, and how do I present that to the user? And when the user starts to browse through one of those trees, how do we show the right loading states and load the right data at the right time? And Ember's been, in particular, Ember Data has been very helpful in making all that work.
Nice. So you guys have been able to make Ember Data work with large amounts of data.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Yeah, that sounds... So do you guys use it at Khorus? Within Khorus?
Yes, we do.
Nice. And so you're dog fooding your own app?
Yep.
Has there been any situations that's helped you resolve within Khorus?
Yeah, I mean, often. And what's neat about it, there's a lot of transparency in the app. So I'm able to go in and look at the sales team and how their goals are going, or the marketing team, or the customer support team, and I can see the comments that they're having about their status. And I might find something interesting is happening in another team, and I can go over and talk to them about that, and maybe we end up collaborating in a way that we never would have before.
Awesome. Yeah. Anything to help create better collaboration, better teamwork.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Speaking of teamwork, are you guys hiring more team members right now?
We are. We are looking for a range of experience. Folks that have an Ember and Rails stack experience would be ideal, and anybody who has experience with a large single-page app is a big plus. But like I said, we are looking for a range of experience, and we're willing to do some training to help people who maybe have just been playing with Ember but want to learn more. This would be a good place to do that. We are still a small team, so it's a place people can come have impact.
Awesome. Well, that's good to hear. So how should they contact you if they're wanting to apply?
Yeah, you could email careers@khorus.com, and Khorus is spelled with a K, so Khorus.
All right, so careers@khorus.com.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. All right, well, thank you for coming on. Is there anything else you want to tell our listeners?
No, I mean, the last year and a half with Ember there's been challenges, but it's been a blast, and I'm looking forward to, it seems like the Ember community keeps on growing, and I'm glad to be a part of it.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
This is the end of the show, but here's a message from our sponsor. Our sponsor who happens to be me. So I run EmberScreencast.com. If you're an intermediate level developer, then this site is for you. So you've read your introductory book and you're ready to get started, but you're not quite into reading the source code yet. So I go and I explain some of the basics, but I also explain cool add-ons and some intermediate to advanced topics as well. So go ahead and check out EmberScreencast.com. 2 screencasts released every week for the intermediate Ember developer. I hope to see you there.